There's someone in almost every group, every class, every meeting, every dinner table. The person who listens, who nods, who smiles at the right moments, who understands everything, but says almost nothing. Maybe that person is you. You're there. You're present. You're following every word. When someone tells a joke, you understand it before anyone else laughs. When the conversation shifts, you notice. You have thoughts. You even have something to say. But nobody knows that, because the only thing people can hear is your silence. And after a while, they stop waiting for you to speak. They don't mean to. It just happens. You become the quiet one, not because you chose it, but because silence became the easiest thing. Here's what nobody talks about. Silence isn't empty. Your silence is full. Full of words you didn't say. Full of sentences that formed and then disappeared. Full of moments where you knew exactly what you wanted to say and said nothing. Nobody sees that. They see the quiet. They don't see what's behind it. And after a while, you stop trying to show them. It feels easier to let people misunderstand you than to struggle to explain yourself. Think about the last time you were in a group. Maybe a work meeting. Maybe dinner with friends. Maybe a conversation you wanted to be part of. You understood everything. You followed every word. And at some point, you had something to say. But instead, you picked up your phone and looked at the screen. Or you said yeah, because a full sentence felt like too much risk. Or you let someone else answer first, telling yourself you'd speak next. And then the moment passed. And you didn't. Nobody knew. Nobody knew you had something to say. Nobody knew you were right there, with words forming, with thoughts moving, just unable to let them out. That invisibility, that feeling of being present but unseen, that's what this video is about. Silence starts small. Maybe the first time you just weren't sure of one word. So you waited. And waiting felt safer than risking the wrong word. The next time, you waited again. Because waiting had worked before. Nothing bad happened in the silence. Silence felt like the responsible choice. And slowly, without deciding to, you became someone who waits. Who listens first. Who finds a reason to stay quiet in almost every situation. And then something harder happens. After a while, people stop expecting you to speak. And eventually, you stop expecting it from yourself too. The silence stops feeling like a choice. For a long time, it feels like silence is just your personality. But maybe it started much smaller than that. Think about the people who have sat in rooms for years and nobody knew how much they had to say. They nodded. They smiled. They rehearsed a sentence in their head, over and over, until the moment to say it was gone. They laughed a little late, after they were sure it was safe. They answered with short, careful words when they had long, full thoughts. You might be one of those people. And if you are, this is something important to hear. In English, you feel like a smaller version of who you actually are. The thoughts are there. The personality is there. The humor, the opinions, the things you care about, all there. But English becomes a filter that lets very little through. And after a long time with that filter, you start to forget what it sounds like when the real you speaks. After a while, it stops feeling like an English problem. It starts feeling personal. You were never the quiet one. You became the quiet one, not because of who you are, but because of what kept happening. Situation after situation, until silence started to feel like the only option. It's not the only option. But it can take a long time to believe that. Maybe next time, you let one thing come out before the silence closes again. Not perfectly, not impressively, just one thing. Because that one small thing is the first crack in a very long silence. And silence, once it starts to crack, doesn't seal itself back up the same way. Tell me in the comments, when was the last time you understood everything, but said nothing? I read every comment, and I'll see you in the next video.